thank you to all who are here today. Let's jump in. This is another in our series of webinars to provide value to our clients and bring in from time to time trusted partners in the technology space that we really think you ought to take a look at. We got no dog in this hunt. We just think that this is a way to deliver value to you in this. This webinar today is all about data quality, and we are thinking of as well always these days about artificial intelligence in just about everything we do. And while data quality, since we started the business, has been something we focused on, it is just becoming increasingly important with the advent of artificial intelligence, because AI lives on data. Large language models rely on large amounts of information to feed them to drive your business. If your data is not clean, then we all struggle with a little bit of hallucinations. We really struggle with the hallucinations. All right, let's go, Lizzie.
All right. Quick agenda for the day. We'll start off with some speaker introductions.
I think most folks here probably know me. I'm CEO and founder of Hunley. Also, definitely a data nerd. I've been one of the strongest proponents of data quality here over the years. I preach it, so always happy to see another tool like DataGroomr come that we think, oh, this could really solve problems for clients.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Stephen Pogrebivsky. I'm co-founder and president of DataGroomr. I'll be doing your demo today, and yeah, I also have a lot of experience, both structured and unstructured data, and yeah, look forward to presenting this to you today.
Totally, and just a reminder to the audience, so we do have a question box at the top. If you have any questions throughout, feel free to write those in.
Yeah, we'll definitely field questions live towards the end, and if we don't hear anything, come in. I may pepper folks with some questions and put you on the spot. Away we go, Steve.
All right, let me start sharing my screen. Yeah, so a little bit of a couple of comments before we start. So generally when I do these demos to a large group, there tends to be quite a few questions, and as Aaron and Lizzie said, that ideally, if you don't mind posting them, we'll try to get to them towards the end of the presentation. If I go really quickly, I can do this probably in about 35 minutes. But yeah, off we go. So one other thing I want to explain to you is that the demo I'm doing today is available to you as a trial. So everything I'm showing to you today, you can go ahead and just basically log into your sandbox or to your production environment and try it out. So one of the really nice things about DataGroomr is that we are a SaaS-based application. We connect to Salesforce using Salesforce APIs, very similar to the set of APIs that you use for Lightning. So essentially, we're just a different user interface for Salesforce. So everything you see in DataGroomr is live in real time. There are ways to actually run DataGroomr inside of Salesforce Lightning. My demo will be outside because I just hate to lose the real estate that Salesforce takes away with their headers and such. But anyway, if you do, the really nice thing about DataGroomr is there's really nothing to install in Salesforce. So you can just basically come in, start pressing buttons, and you'll see information pop up. So generally, most people come, when they start using the application, they go to press the login button here. The login button simply takes you to this page, which is the general login page. You can decide to log into your production environment or to a sandbox. In my case, I'm just connecting to my dev org. So when you first log in, and this is literally all you really need to do, what you will see is a little wizard that pops up like this. And what the foundation of DataGroomr is built on AI. When we started back in 2018, the world of AI was limited to machine learning. And that's what we started with, and we use machine learning throughout the application. But as Gen AI has expanded, we've also added features about that, and I will show you quite a few things around that as well. But actually, this first page, we start off with just trying to find out who you are. It's just our way to greet and say hello. And then we ask you which objects are important to you. So as Aaron pointed out, a lot of this presentation is on deduplications, but DataGroomr actually does quite a few other things. But in the beginning, what we're trying to do is help you with your duplicates. That's what most people come in and talk to us about. So we start off by asking you, which objects do you wish to dedupe? And again, we kind of highlight accounts, contacts. Sometimes people use leads, sometimes they don't. In fact, DataGroomr supports any object in Salesforce. So if you have custom objects, you can just add them here as well. On this next page, what you see is this analysis that happens. Now, in your case, it will take a little longer. Mine is a simulation. But what happens when I press that analysis is that we go through and look at the objects you selected to try to identify which fields would be important in terms of determining what is and what isn't a duplicate. We then try to look at how your data is dispersed throughout your objects, and that gives us a way to build what are called matching models. So we call them matching models. If you've ever used any dedupe tools like Salesforce before, they call them matching rules. The reason we call them models is because in AI, they're called models. And since we support AI as well as traditional ways to find duplicates, that's why you get the name. Anyway, once you get through this part, in the background, DataGroomr will start analyzing your data for duplicates. So that's essentially all you really need to do. And when we're done, you will get a report that looks similar to this. So you'll get a little dashboard that says, hey, we found this many duplicates in this object, this many duplicates in that object. We also support cross-object data sets. So if you have a scenario, which is a very common one, like leads and contacts, we will display that. And actually, this is built out of the box if you select both leads and contacts. The dashboard also shows you a lot of other interesting information besides duplicates. So you do see duplicate history. But because we do that data analysis, we also provide you information about the quality of your data. So how complete is your data? We can tell you how consistent your formatting. So if you have phone numbers or zip codes that are all different types of formats, we can kind of give you that information. That is important when you're looking for duplicates, but we can also help you fix that as well. Another module, which I really won't spend a whole lot of time on, is data verification. That's also built into DataGroomr, so we can verify phone numbers, email, mailing addresses, and websites. And if you do run those types of reports, you can get a data validity score. These are quite extensive, so if you're struggling with emails being delivered or mail being delivered, this is quite useful in terms of helping you remedy that. But once you're done with the dashboard, most of the work you will do will be here on the left-hand side. As you can see, we're broken down into logical modules. Each one of these blue things is a module, and I'm going to focus primarily on deduplication, although I'll touch on the other ones as well. So when I click on dedupe, you see the same 4 boxes that you saw before. We call these data sets, and each data set points at all the data you have inside the object. Sometimes there's a good reason to create your own data sets, and it's very easy to do by just going over here and pressing, and you can add a single object data set, which is something like accounts and contacts, or a cross object, which is leads and contacts. You can create a cross object for any 2 objects, or even sometimes within the same object. Just to give you an example, I have a bunch of leads based in Canada. So let's say I'm somebody who's responsible for the Canadian region and I want to dedupe just that. I can create a subset just for that reason. So I'll say, yes, I'm interested in leads in Canada. And then these other tabs let me configure what this data set does. Fields basically shows me which fields will be displayed when we find duplicates. You'll see that in how that works in a minute. The filter is probably the most important part of configuration because that lets me filter the data. Now, since in my case, I'm interested in leads only in Canada, I can select the country field. And just like you would set an operation up in Salesforce, you can say, well, it must contain the word Canada. And you can see I'm starting out with 21,000 records. When I apply this filter, we'll filter down just to the amount that I'm interested in. We understand that these filters can be oversimplistic sometimes, so we do give you an ability to just put in your where command from a SOQL query, and we will verify that it's valid, and I just filter based on your SOQL query. The other tabs, the match, is where you define how matching is done. So I remember I talked about matching models in the beginning, and this is where you can define them. So we build models right out of the box for you based on that analysis up front. You can build your own models later. And I'll show you how to do that, where to do that a little bit later on. But you can see like we have basic models that have been built by us already here. And I can just select any one I like here. We support both traditional, what we call classic, and machine learning. Also, we do support multiple matching models per data set, so that could be quite helpful. So often people want to use classic or traditional just to find exact duplicates, the ones that are obvious, and then machine learning will find nuanced duplicates that classic models will never find. The merge tab allows me to define how merge happens. So that's the goal. In the end of the day, you want to remove your duplicates. So this is how merging happens. That's controlled by a set of rules. Again, I kind of will show you in a minute how to configure them. There's the first rule, the master record rule, selects the surviving or winning record. There's a bunch of terminology, but basically this is the record that stays behind when you do a merge. The field merge rule takes values from the records that will not survive the merge and puts it into the surviving record. And that's quite often important. You might have extra information in these records. So before they're removed completely, this gives you an ability to move them into the surviving records so the data is preserved. We also, sometimes you make a mistake. There's a gotcha. You merge something, but you want to go back. We offer actually two different ways to reverse those merges: undo and rollback. Undo uses the Salesforce recycling bin, so it's kind of limited to the retention schedule, which is generally 15 days. Rollback is an enhanced reversal, and that allows you to basically reverse indefinitely. There's multiple ways to trigger automated merges, right? So sometimes you know something is a dupe, there's no need to do it, no need to review it. The live duplicate detection is something that will do a review of a duplicate as soon as a record hits Salesforce. And if it finds that it's a duplicate, you can auto merge it, or you can trigger a flow in Salesforce to alert somebody about it. So there's a bunch of options. There's another way to automatically merge records, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. So I've kind of showed you how to set up these data sets. So let's say you have it set up and you now need to remove the duplicates. Let's go look at how you can do that. So this is my contacts data set. I'm using multiple ways to find duplicates. So a classic model and also a machine learning model. And you can see the results here. So this first one, for example, found these duplicates based on a classic, and this one based on machine learning. And sometimes we use both. So you can see it's quite convenient. Each of these is a group of duplicates. So a duplicate group can have 2 or more records. There's no limit. And you can see each one has a match confidence, right? So you can preview this by just clicking on this gray area or just pressing the review button. We'll show you those records side by side. And this is where those fields that you selected are relevant, because if you need to see a field, you can add it here. You can change this at any time. Your 2 basic operations are merge and unmatch. Unmatch means these are not duplicates. Merge means they are, and off you go. Let's take a look at this scenario. It's a little bit more complex. So here I have 4 different records, and you can see this is my surviving record. This was picked based on my rule. These other records are the ones that will go away. You can see the differences between the surviving record and the other records are shown in red. So one of the first things you can do here in terms of manipulation is you can decide that this is not the record that will survive. You want a different record. Let's say this one here. So you can click on the word master, a little radio button appears over the records, select the one that you do wish to survive, and that one will be moved over here. If we choose this one here, what's interesting is it's missing data in these 2 fields, but when I select it, that data is automatically populated. That's a field merge rule firing. So I have a rule that says if you have empty fields in my surviving record, populate them from the most recently modified record. And that's why it selected it, because this is the most recently modified one. You can uncheck records, which will allow you not to merge something, a record. You can also do this by rule, so it's automatically excluded. So quite a bit of control here over the actual matching. One thing that you'll notice here is we have something called AI recommend, right? So AI, you'll see that I have that enabled actually in quite a few of these records. So what typically happens is that people will identify that records groups or match groups over a certain limit are definitely duplicates. So maybe something like 90 is definitely a minimum. Anything below that, you're not sure. So what we have done is we have added this thing called AI recommend. So unlike matching rules, AI recommend uses AI and looks at the context of the records themselves. And what it does is it actually gives you some very interesting information. So here's a group that has a very low match confidence. If we look at it, you can see that the two records inside this group are virtually identical. What is different is the email, and because email is very highly valued, uh, these two records get a very low match confidence. So I ran AI recommend, and if you look at the details, this is explained in English basically that this group is these records are somehow linked because Alphabet is Google's parent company. So again, you can have a human being look at it who may know this or may not know this. Sometimes these things are not as obvious, but you can have AI actually recognize these relationships and identify these things and actually give you an idea whether something should be merged or something should be linked or something should be split. So it's an additional little feature that you have. So at some point, especially if you have a lot of duplicates, you just want to mass merge them. That's available here. And mass merge is controlled based on the match confidence. We do allow all types of filtering that you can add. So if you do apply these merge suggestions, you can include those records or exclude records based on a specific suggestion here. So the other common use case is when people get this configured, they say, look, every so often, I just want the system to go through and remove these duplicates. So for that, we include a module called automate, and automate runs jobs. And one of the most common jobs that people actually use is mass merge. And this is how a job is created. Just give it a name, select which data sets you wish to merge. Again, the same things, parameters that you selected before, minimum match confidence, filters. But the difference here is that you will select a specific time when you want this job to run. So this can be any time that you want. And the other unique thing is you can have this as a recurring job. So every so often this comes in and just runs the mass merge and removes the duplicates as they slowly enter your system. And you can set up a frequency, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly. Quite often people select daily and then just select specific days. Press next, this creates a job, and then this by itself automatically comes in and removes the duplicate records. Little bit about configuration deduplication, just to finish the sort of the focus on deduping. If you go to the settings tab, this is where you can kind of control what happens in actually in terms of matching. That means finding duplicates and then actually what happens during the merge. So if I go to the contact object here, we've already created, or the system automatically created all of these. Actually, this one I created myself for the purpose of the demo. But you can come in here and say, look, I know you created these for me, but I'd like to do this for myself because I have some very specific criteria. So you can go ahead and click on add a model. Again, there's two different options. Let's start with classic. So we'll give it a name, say, I want to create a classic model. And then you can add the fields that you need to use for deduplication purposes. If you'd like, we also give you AI Assist here, which will recommend the fields that you should use and also configure them for you. So this, you can see these fields were selected. You can then go through and remove fields. You can change the match confidence. So remember, in classic model, the match confidence is based on how many of these fields match. It just adds up the match confidence together and gets it to the total. So you can come in and change them here. You can also change what type of matching is done, whether it's an exact or similar. Similar is fuzzy matching, which I think many of you are familiar with. I'm a big fan of using machine learning instead of similar, much more accurate, but we certainly make it available. And then you have quite a bit of control over actually what happens when you do this type of matching. So for example, sometimes you're comparing two records and one side of this field is blank. Do you want to match on that? So that gives you control. Another unique feature is, like, quite often people use different fields to store the same data. Emails are a common scenario here because they want to keep multiple emails or multiple phone numbers. You can add all those fields, group them together, and we will search across all of those fields. Um, Another unique thing that we do is pre-processing. So we can actually manipulate the data only for the purpose of processing it, right? Only for the purpose of looking whether it's a duplicate or not. And we can do all types of pre-processing. So for example, for phone numbers, we can do format phone number. So this is a common rule that comes out of the box. And what we do is we give you a selection of 4 different standards that are used throughout the world to format phone numbers. You can select any of those standards, and we will automatically format these phone numbers for the purpose of comparison. Transform rules can be done to permanently change the values as well. That's done in our cleanse module, which I'll show you a little bit later. Another feature that we give you is an ability to add dictionaries. So you can add a dictionary of synonyms. So for example, first names, like my name, can be spelled at least in 3 different ways. Actually, when Aaron and I were preparing, he asked me, do you prefer Steve or Stephen? That's a common thing, especially Stephen can be spelled multiple ways. So we give you a dictionary of Western names. You can create your own dictionaries or append to our dictionaries. And you can have dictionaries of synonyms or words you wish to ignore. So for example, if you're comparing account names and you wish to strip out the company suffixes, Inc., LLC, LLP, etc., you can do that using this functionality here. But once you have this configured, press save, and you have your own matching model that you can use for finding duplicates. Machine learning allows you to do something very similar, but again, machine learning has one major distinction. In the beginning, you start off the same way, you select the fields, but what you'll see here is you have more than a save button, you have a train button, because machine learning requires you to train this model on what is a duplicate to you. So unlike a classic model, which just look for exact or fuzzy match, this kind of configures itself based on the data patterns you would use to identify duplicates. So when you press the train button, we give you 2 options. AI system will do the training for you. So you just press confirm and sit back and wait till it actually does the training for you. Or manually, you can do it yourself. I always recommend starting with the AI system, but sometimes manual merging does make sense. And I have a good example of this here. So this is a model that I created. I set up 5 fields, and this is actually showing me 2 records directly from my object. And it's asking me, are these duplicates? So I can say, yes, it is, no, it's not, or I'm not sure. And in this case, they are. It shows me more data. And as I say yes or no, this constantly builds up until we have a certain amount of coverage or confidence level. This model will cover everything. And then this finish button becomes active, and you've trained the model to identify duplicates the way that you work. So that's matching. Let's take a look at master record rule and field merge rule. So again, these are the rules that control the merging process. So when you press merge, this is what happens, right? So the master record rule selects which record will survive. That's its only functionality. We give you some rules out of the box, but you can build your own. So this is, again, where AI plays a big part. In previous days, you had to do this manually. We basically had allowed you to drag to this little screen, and you could then configure it. But these days, you can just go through and type in what you want the rule to do. So I have a little example here that I just configured before. You press generate, and the system builds out this rule for you. You don't even have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. This over here is a little preview window. It's a simulator. It's filled with dummy data, and it shows you what this rule will do if you do have, let's say, 4 records that are identified as duplicates. In this case, my basic rule is just looking for last modified date. That's the #1 criteria here, and that being the most recent. And you can see my data is sorted from highest to lowest, and the highest one is picked as the surviving record. Again, if there was a tiebreaker, it would go to this one. Prioritize allows you to override the other criteria. So you can do that as well if you'd like. And you can actually communicate just like you would in any Gen AI tool. You can say, change this, change that, and this will manipulate the rule for you. So quite easy to do. Once you have a rule defined, configure it in your data set, and this is how it will work. The other rule that's quite often uses the field merge rules. Now, these tend to be a little bit more complicated than the master record rule because you can have a different rule for every field. But I want to give you a few examples. So this is the rule I showed you when we were doing the initial merging. It basically just fills in empty fields in your master record, but I don't have any empty fields here. So one of the nice things we let you do is you can kind of press the edit button and manipulate the data here. So in my case, I'm just going to remove the annual revenue on the website here. And when I press run, you can see it's red. The rule fired because it was blank, and it copied this data because out of these three records, this is the most recently modified. And again, if you do change this, you'll see changes in the data here. So you can right away visually see the impact of what the rule will do with data. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of what you can do with these rules. So this is a little bit more complex. You can have many different scenarios. This is an if-then rule that says if this is true, do this, and what all it did is fill in these two values. This is an interesting rule. Sometimes you find duplicates, but you don't want to merge them. There might be a good reason to keep them. So what this says, exclude a record, and you can see this one is excluded. We use silly logic where we say this phone number and this phone number are the same, then excluded, but it shows you an example of what this can do. Probably the most common rule that's used is something similar to this. People just want to take all the values and drop them into some field. That's what this rule does. In my case, I use the description field. If I hover over the description field, you'll see what the rule did. It actually grabbed the field name for each one of the fields that I have selected here, and then it grabbed the values from the records that will be merged away, separated by a semicolon, and it dropped it into this field so you have that information for later if you'd like. Sometimes that doesn't make sense, and one of the most common scenarios is phone numbers and emails. So quite often you don't want to merge phone numbers or emails. They become hard to use. So what we do is allow you to distribute. Phone numbers are a good case to show. So here I have 3 fields that can store phone numbers. All of my fields are populated, but if you see between my surviving record and the other 2 that won't survive, there's 3 phone numbers. So if I simulate that these 2 fields are actually empty instead of being populated and press run, you can see this phone number is moved here and this phone number is moved here. So this is something pretty hard to do manually when you do merging, but pretty easy just to use this type of rule to do this. Okay. I think I kind of covered most of the dupe. Let me go through a couple of the other modules just to give you an idea, maybe 5 or 7 minutes on that, and then I will open it up for questions if you have any. So let's move to the cleanse module. So the cleanse module has 3 basic operations. Again, it works using data sets. But instead, the first 3 tabs are the same, but the other 3 are different. So analyze allows us to build data quality analysis, right? So those graphs that I showed you on the dashboard before, they come from here. But the other 2 things that it lets you do is do data verification. So this is where you configure them, and data transforms, right? So data transform is one of the most commonly used features in the product, as well as data verifications. And the way data transforms work is that you configure transform rules. So transform rules are set up under cleanse settings, and you can have all types of transform rules. I told you before that we actually have a format tool for phone numbers, and that's this one over here. You can basically set up any of the 4 standards in the world, and if you select one and then do a little simulation here, it will show you what it will do with your data. We give you formats out of the box for countries. So do you want the full name or abbreviation, states or province, zip postal codes, Social Security, EINs numbers if you wish to run it through this. Website names are very common. And also obviously text fields. Sometimes you want to change the case to proper case, sometimes to uppercase, sometimes to lowercase. You can do that as well. One other interesting thing that we do though is we allow you to use regex. So regex opens up the possibility of doing transforms that with just about anything, right? So one of the very simplest examples that I have here is with this one that we received from a customer who asked us basically, look, I want to grab the domain name from my email and put it into this other field. So I went in here, basically copy and paste her email message, and this is the rule that was generated. Now, if I enable this, you can see we're grabbing the email address from these two fields, and the email domain, and we're putting them into these fields. So this is a very minor example of, but this can be a very powerful tool to sort of transform all your data and make it look right. Once you have all of these configured and applied to your data sets, these can be run through for all your data. So you can go through, find specific data. We have a little search tab here. You can search for anything, or you can do it in bulk. So mass verify, mass transform. The nice thing about transforms is you can actually preview what they will do on a certain amount of data before you actually press the transform all button. So that's the cleanse module. The transfer module is kind of our answer to data loader, right? So one of the biggest challenges with data loader is that it introduces a lot of duplicates. So we have all these wonderful matching models that people have created in order to identify duplicates. So what we let you do is load your data through our module, and we will detect the duplicates before they come into Salesforce. So that's done just by selecting your data source. Most of the time, folks who use CSVs, sometimes we do move data from object to object, but let's take a look what happens. So I'm going to load, sorry about that. We'll just need to find my file that I have. All right, I have a file which is very obviously called import with dupes. I select this file, decide I want to import it into leads. What am I going to compare it to? I can compare it to all my lead records, or I can compare just leads, or I can compare it to specific data sets. Remember, I have a cross objects data set called leads and contacts. If I select that one, it will compare it to both leads and contacts at the same time. So when I press next, we will do a mapping exercise, basically map your field names, your column names in your spreadsheet to field names in Salesforce. We'll detect most of them. You can use AI to detect this as well, or you can set it up manually. On the next page, though, is the key. You can select which matching model you wish to find your duplicates, right? So I'm just going to use the default, press confirm. And what happens at this point is we'll take your spreadsheet and we'll load it into DataGroomr, and we will start comparing it to Salesforce, but we're not loading anything into Salesforce. So we're not creating duplicates in Salesforce. We're just doing a comparison purposes. So when this is done, and generally this goes pretty quickly, so you can see this finished the comparison. I'm trying to import 120 records. 30 of them were detected as duplicates, right? 90 were not. You can then click on this block. Here's my unmatched records. Those are the ones that are not duplicates. You can simply just mass import it. If you do have a campaign, so let's say you went to a conference or something and you want to add the campaign to it, you can go ahead and add that, press import all, and it goes directly into your Salesforce. Duplicates are shown here. They can obviously be ignored. Sometimes there is interesting information in these duplicates, and what I've noticed is that customers have started using pretty creative ways to update their data, to do data enrichment using this way. So here's a scenario. This is my record in Salesforce. This is the one I'm trying to import. You can see this individual looks like they were promoted, right, from customer service to customer service manager. You can click on this. It will move this data here, press update, and we will update the data in Salesforce. So we did a little bit of enrichment. This is great if you're importing like a dozen records. Anything above that, we do offer an ability to just automate it using a mass update and a rule that does this for you. So yeah, I think that is the basic functionality of the product. We do have a setup tool here that allows you to do configurations like choose which objects you wish to use. There's an audit module which tracks every transaction you do in DataGroomr. If you ever have an error or anything, there's quite a bit of information here. So you can go ahead, and if you ever do get an error, you can send it to us. We actually have a built-in support module in here where you can contact us directly with any questions you'd like. If you do a trial, your trials are fully supported as well. I think that is about it. And do we have any questions that I can answer, or is there?
I don't know that I see any in the question feed yet, but let me ask what I think should be an obvious question to all the folks on the call here, and don't make me pick on you by name here. But with 40% of the respondents here saying they didn't even know what their duplication rate is, that most obvious piece of data quality in a Salesforce org, what's a super easy way for them to figure out what the benchmark is, how bad their problem is, without maybe spending any money on this?
Well, so that's the nice thing about the trial. As soon as you come in, we'll do a data analysis and we'll provide them a detailed report on how many duplicates we found. So you can go through, review the duplicates, you can adjust it. So the trial is a great tool for them to get a quick overview in terms of how bad their data is.
Love it. So definitely want to encourage anybody, give it a trial for free. We started that way as we test all products that before we want to bring them to our clients here, so we see it ourselves. We're using DataGroomr in our own Salesforce org to help cleanse, update, and maintain now. So I can personally attest to the quality of the tool and its functionality. So strongly encourage you to do that. And what is more compelling than doing that install, creating that dashboard of the duplication rate and the quality rate of your database, and then share it with whomever in leadership is responsible for getting you the budget to subscribe to the tool and begin that journey of cleansing and standardizing your database. What other questions we got out there? Definitely want to prompt all of our own clients here to think about the bigger context of AI, in which data quality assessment certainly can be an element. Lizzie, if you want to bring that slide up here. So this is an offering that we have for everyone who's considering AI in some fashion in Salesforce. Very delighted to take a look at this together with you from the Huntley side here. So got a sign up package for that if anybody wants to get on the bandwagon with that. All right, what else have we got? Anything, Stephen, from the DataGroomr side?
No, but as you said, we welcome any future questions. If you have any pricing or commercial questions, either contact the Huntley group and they will help you out, or you can contact us directly as well. But yeah, I welcome everybody to the trial. I think you'll be impressed.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephen and the DataGroomr crew. We will share the recording of this again with everyone so you have it accessible. I'd strongly encourage everybody to think about at minimum a trial installation of DataGroomr. See what you get. I think you'll find it compelling. Have a wonderful day, everyone.